Here are our Stranger Things cookies. I know I don't have Will here, but he wasn't really there in the first season, and as I'm making their outfits from the first season, that's just fair. If you want me to make any more of them, let me know in the comments below. Okay, now let's see how these are made. I used my moo cookies, which are similar to sugar cookies, but are a tad harder. If you want to try making those, the link to that is here. But as I'm going to roll these out, I didn't add as much flour as I would normally. Don't worry, I'm writing the recipe in the description below as usual. If the dough is still too crumbly, don't shy away to add a bit of oil and test how the dough is spreading in your hand, like I'm doing here. I set aside a bit of the dough for Lucas. As I want a darker cookie, I add just a tiny bit of cacao and knead that. If you think the color is too light, you can always add more cacao. Or if it's too dark, just add a bit more from the plain dough. Then it's time to roll out these suckers. I spread some flour on my working surface, get a part of the dough and put a piece of baking paper on it. When you roll out the dough with a paper like this, you get a smoother surface and the dough doesn't tear as much. Then it's time to cut out the cookies. I have some cookie cutters for gingerbread men, but you can make your own templates and cut around those. Carefully lift off the cookies and place them onto a baking tray. Of course, we do the same for the Lucas cookies as well. Roll out with some baking paper, then cut out and carefully put it onto a tray. I bake them as usual at 170 degrees Celsius for about 15 minutes. As Dustin and 11 had a tad darker skin than Mike, I used my skin-colored fondant and cut out the two pieces. Then I brush on some water ever so slightly because we don't want to get the cookies soggy and place the cutout fondant onto it. Let that dry for a bit, as otherwise the fondant will just slide around. If you're not comfy with the water on the cookie directly, you can brush on the water onto the fondant and then put it there. I know it's basically the same, but it seems easier to track when it's on the fondant. I mixed some white to the skin color from Mike's cookie, and some skin color to my brown fondant for Lucas. Then again, put them onto the cookie and now finally we start to decorate them. I'm starting with my darling Dustin. For his curly hair, I roll out some light brown fondant and cut them to stripes which end up way too thick and wide. Before I put the hair on, I roll out some black fondant to a thin snake, cut off a few pieces and squish them onto the face to form some eyes and the mouth. I wanted to have him smile and enjoy himself. He's such a cheerful character and damn, I love him. He's so cute. Okay, enough fangirling. I make the brown stripes thinner and cut them to half their width and carefully twist them to make some curls. Then I carefully push them onto the fondant. If your fondant is just a tad too hard, just make the lower fondant a tiny bit wet. It should stick right on. I cut off the excess and continue adding more of the curls. I'm not adding too many of them as he'll get his cap. Now onto this shirt of his. I had mixed the teal color before for some other project and I just apply it onto the cookie. I cut off where his pants are going to be. As I like this color a lot on him, I make them his shoes as well. I just smush them on and cut off the excess with my X-Acto knife. For his jacket, I roll out some dark blue fondant, wet the cookie a bit and just put it on. As we still want to see his hands, I cut that part off and anything else that's too much. As I don't want to cut right through all the fondant, there are some untidy edges, which I correct with the tool that is lying around at home. I make an indentation for his arm as well, to make it more pronounced, or even a bit textured. I repeat the same steps for the other side. With the same blue, I make the top side of his hat and carefully push it behind his hair. Off with the excess and round it off a bit. For the front part of the cap, I cut out a fairly round piece and put it right at the edge of the upper part. Before I place the rim of the cap, I make the collar pieces of the jacket, which are basically 2 triangles. Again, I cut a fairly rounded shape and put that straight edge onto the end of the white part. And we got ourselves a 3D-ish cap. As his final part, he gets some round pants. I line it up with the shirt, cut off the excess, and touch it up with my shape tool thingy. And Dustin is done. As 11 doesn't have hair for most of the season, I get a bit darker skin tone and cut out a squiggly shape, put that right onto the hat. Cut off the excess and now to her face. I got 2 small pieces of black fondant and spread them with my tool. Another small piece for the mouth, which is formed into a frown. As this wasn't frowny enough for me, I pushed down her eyes a bit more, as if she had her eyebrows down. For her pink dress, I took a tiny bit of red and lots of white and mixed that into the color you see here. I rolled that out real thin and attached that to her body with a tiny bit of water. I cut out her collar part and off the sides as well. To imitate a bit of the pattern, I mixed a tad darker pink, which is separately still kind of visible, but get kind of lost in the footage here once they are worked into the pink dress. First, a bit of her collar, then closer at the rim of the dress. Then some white rounded shape for the baby collar, which I don't see the need to clean off, as she's gonna wear a jacket anyways. But before that comes on, she gets some white socks. It was kind of tough to keep some distance between the dress and the shoes and the socks, so I make do. Gingerbread man cookies just aren't the tallest. The socks are basically just 2 white stripes, which get attached with a tad of water and off with the excess again. Just like with Dustin, I wet her arms a bit and put on the fondant. Make the hole for the hand with the X-Acto knife and a bit of a touch-up. Repeat the same step for the other side. And now it's time for the shoes. I like the teal I just used for Dustin, so here it is back for the shoes. I attach them the same way as before, off with the excess, and 11 is done. You know the drill, I guess. This time I directly start with the face of my dear Mike. So 3 tiny pieces of black for the eyes and the mouth, which are pressed into their place. For his hair, I cut out a very dark brown at an angle for his part in his hair. I brush on some water and carefully put the hair in its place. I didn't cut it quite at the angle I wanted, so I had to wiggle a bit to and fro to make it just fit right. Once I was happy, I cut off the excess and moved onto his shirt. First a stripe of white, and after that I alternated between a lighter and a darker blue. I didn't care for the sides again, but this time the fondant for the jacket was just a tad too thin, so I had to roll out that again. I do like the taste of these new fondants, but it still doesn't need to be too thick. I'm here for the cookie, not for the fondant after all. Not completely, at least. Both the parts of the jacket get into their place. Again, cut to size and touch up, and indentations for detail. Mike gets some white shoes and then some dark gray as pants. Those get cleaned up as well, and Mikey is done too. Finally, we got to Lucas. Just like with Mike, I first make his face with the tiny pieces of black fondant. He gets the same color as him as well, a dark brown which gets attached with a tad of water, but this time it is rounded off a bit. Off with the excess, and then he gets his camouflage bandana, which is just left green. Sorry, Lucas. Then he gets a darker blue shirt, and I darkly put on his shoes as well. His jeans are a decent denim color too. Those need a bit more touch up than the others, but it still looks good. It's just a bit more work. Then he gets his red jacket with the off-whitish color, which is basically skin tone. I must say, even though I had such a small canvas to work with, I really like the result and I can't wait to watch the new season. Thank God I got 2 days off this week. More time to watch them all in one sitting. Would love to see if you try this out. Tag us on our social media accounts, which are listed in the description below. Like and comment if you want to support us, and subscribe if you don't want to miss our weekly videos. Thank you for watching and see you next week.